Chief Executive Team, the transformation of leadership. Why do you think that these highly capable executive teams still fail to perform as a leadership unit?
The executive team is usually the worst team in the company, exactly where we should have the best one.
What is the difference between a group of strong executives and a real executive team?
The team requires that we have a common purpose, common processes, common goals for which we hold each other mutually accountable.
Why do you think that still so many executive teams struggle with trust?
Trust is its own animal. But even if we manage those conditions, I cannot force you to trust me.
What happens to these executive teams under pressure to make them fracture?
Pressure doesn't change behavior. It just makes explicit what was there already. You end up reducing the quantity and or quality of the decisions made.
I expected that you have mentioned somehow the term ego when talking about executives.
In human systems, we have a different mathematics. Mathematics tells you 1 + 1 = 2. But in human systems, 1 + 1 = 3. Me, you, and the nature, the structure of the relationship that we establish.
How much organizational culture is shaped indeed by the executive team?
This team sets the tone, the standard, the role model for the behavior in the company.
Hello, Ricardo. Finally, we had a chance to sit down and have this conversation, which we've been postponing for a while, unfortunately.
I'm really excited about it, John Ricardo. Thank you for the invitation.
Me too. I've been looking for long to have this conversation. You are the CEO and founder of a company called Consulting House, but also you are Amazon bestseller, author of this book that I have here, Chief Executive Team, the transformation of leadership, but also owner of a new YouTube channel called Rewiring Leadership. Is this a good summary of your profile so far, Ricardo?
Great. Thank you.
Leadership is a topic that we'll hear a lot today. Your book, it has it on the title. It's also visible on the back when you mention that executive team's effectiveness is the elephant in the room. Why do you think that these highly capable executive teams still fail to perform as a leadership unit together?
I say that the executive team is usually the worst team in the company, exactly where we should have the best one. And that is the elephant in the room that companies fail to address. One of the reasons is that we think that by having a group of highly competent individuals, automatically we have a highly functioning, effective executive team. And
not true.
Individual capacity is potential for team capacity. But, when you put together great individuals, great players, you don't get a great team automatically. You need to do stuff for that. And what companies fail to address is the dynamics, the group dynamics, and the processes to create highly effective executive teams. So it's very easy to create an average team with great team members. And it's impossible to have a world-class team with low quality, low capacity individual members. So there's a relationship, of course, but you need to go through a development process in order to upgrade and actualize the potential of the team based on individual capacity.
So then what is the difference between a group of strong executives and a real executive team?
There's interesting research from 2010 where the researcher asks CEOs to evaluate the quality and effectiveness of their team, the executive team, and it also asks the executive team members. And what we find from that research is that usually CEOs evaluate the team better than the team members evaluate themselves and the team. And what misleads the executive team evaluation done by the CEO is that they look superficially at what's happening in the team. So, for example, they look at people are communicating, they exchange information, there's no visible conflict. So, things are running. We have meetings, we decide stuff, we exchange information, and things are happening. It's smooth. So the team must be good. And what the team members look at is the dynamics between the dyads of, the person, the CHRO with the chief marketing officer or the COO. They look at the individual dyads, the relationships. They look at how the things that the CEO doesn't know affect the performance of their own areas, and they rate lower. And what is interesting is when we go down the hierarchy and ask the middle managers to evaluate the executive team, we get even usually lower grades for the executive team effectiveness. So what's missing is that the highly functioning group, a group that exchanges information, that has competent individuals that take those decisions and impacting their own individual areas of accountability, can be a highly functioning working group. But a team requires that we have a common purpose, common processes, common goals, for which we hold each other mutually accountable. So I've got your back, you've got my back. I don't allow you to fail, and you will not allow me to fail. So we allow each other the interference, the positive. I usually say that we allow each other the positive interference into each other's areas of accountability. And accountability doesn't get blurred, it gets expanded in an executive team, in an effective executive team. So what we see from the CEO perspective doesn't change much if we only look superficially, but if we understand the structure below the surface of what the team processes are, then these are two completely different units. One is a working group, individuals working to impact their own individual areas of responsibility and accountability. The other one is shared accountability for purpose, processes, and the relationships of the team.
That sounds like one condition that needs to happen, which is that expanded accountability. Are there other conditions that need to be in place for an executive team to function effectively?
Yeah, I started working with executive teams roughly 30 years ago. It was the late 90s. And I went through the research of these last 30 years when I wrote my book in 2021, using my allowed time during COVID lockdown to finally write the book. And I went through research on management science and social work and organizational psychology, and it's very clear. There's 6 conditions that need to be in place for a group of highly competent individuals to work as an executive team. The first one is a common purpose.
Right.
When there's no purpose, there's no team. There's no reason for me to go the extra mile to support you, to help you to shine, and vice versa, if we don't have a common purpose. Everybody's just working on their silos and doing, business as usual.
Which is a company mission or a company objective, right?
Yeah, there's 2 levels. There's 2 levels. There's the company mission, vision, strategic intent. So strategy, strategic aims, goals, targets. But there's also a transformation that needs to happen in the company. So I distinguish the 2. The future desired company is different from the present one. The people, the company that reaches the goals and gets to the vision has different capabilities and processes and probably products and services than the one that starts doing that job today. We are looking at a vision 5 years from now. Now, the job of the executive team, so basically the purpose of the executive team, is slightly different from the company one and is aligned with it. But it is to get the company, the current company, to transform the current company into the desired one. So they get the caterpillar and they need to support the transformation process for it to become a butterfly. So that's the team purpose. That's the team purpose that I'm talking about. So that's the first condition. The second condition is that we need to look at the team processes. And when I say processes, people immediately go like, okay, that's about tasks and sequencing the tasks and standards for the tasks and workflow and, stuff like that. Those are work management processes. What I work with are the relationship management processes. So it's not what gets done, it's how we are going to do it. And this is about decision-making, coordination, communication, conflict management, and all of these, there's many more. So all of these relationship management processes set the tone of how we are going to work together as a team to get the tasks done. And it can be done in many different ways. So that's the second condition. The third condition, I call it the P for people. It's about generating psychological diversity, trust, and psychological safety in the team. There's, the one that is most limited is usually cognitive diversity. But if we work in psychological safety and increase the trust level, people share the most of their cognitive diversity to get better decisions. Mm-hmm. The fourth is problem solving capabilities. So that's the fourth condition. Problem solving in complex systems as companies is usually neglected. People use simple systems, theory, practice, tools to solve problems in complex organizations. And then they are baffled when second order or third order consequences show up, and they go like, wow, how did this problem that was in department A, and then we solved it there, now it shows up in department B and C differently in a disguise, but it's basically the same constraint that we face in management. So you need to look at the system, understand system thinking in order to solve problems adequately as an executive team in a complex environment that a company is. The following one is the P for possibility. So the condition of possibilities is to generate new possibilities. In the market as is today, it's hostile, it's very dynamic, it's fast changing. How do you solve a problem that you've never seen before? You don't know the solution. You need to learn your way out of the problem. So this is about generating team learning capacities by which the team learns together. They exchange different mental models and processes for learning so that they can acquire and process information faster to learn how to get out of this situation and make the most of it. And finally, it's the potential. So the last condition is that we must, as an executive team, set the tone and deliberately manage leadership in the rest of the company. So we need to set the tone and the standard for what gets done as leaders, what are the priorities, and how we are going to deal with people, and how we are going to get the caterpillar to become the butterfly.
Assuming that all those conditions are met or are work to be met, why do you think that still so many executive teams struggle with trust globally in general, even when they have these experienced leaders? Should they already know better to trust?
Yeah, it's interesting because trust is its own animal. It is something that happens as a result of a set of conditions that we set up.
Okay.
Let's say we need to be very clear on what is expected and how we are going to behave, etc., etc. But even if we manage those conditions, I cannot force you to trust me. You decide on your own if you are going to trust me, even if I meet all those conditions. So trust is a rational and emotional process. You will assess my behavior. That's the evidence. That's the rational part. You look at my past behavior to predict how stable I am, how predictable I am in the relationship with you, this working relationship. But there's also an emotional part to it, which is, are you running a risk by becoming more vulnerable in the relationship? Are you running the risk that I will take advantage of you? So you give me an idea as a testing ground. We are exchanging information, and then I use this against you, or I steal your idea. Are you safe doing that? So it's both a rational, evidence-based, and an emotional, feeling-based. How much do you feel you can share with me without being taken advantage of? And only after that, you will make your decision. What we do in the executive team is we manage the conditions, we set the agreements, we set the standards, we define the relationship management processes that I mentioned before, but people still might not trust each other. Mm-hmm. Usually, we get to a point where people decide that they trust each other, but sometimes there's some past grudges and there's problems. And I need to set up explicit agreements of what's going to happen in specific conditions so that people don't feel that they can be taken advantage of by becoming vulnerable in the relationship. When you do this, usually you solve like 95, 98% of cases. But I've had situations where the CEO needed to take someone off the team, terminate someone, just to solve specific trust problems. And once that person was out, then the other team members decided to trust each other.
Then you managed to get this apparently functional team, executive team. But what happens to these executive teams under pressure to make them fracture?
Any executive team has some fault lines that are there from the beginning, right? They usually are, for example, around demographics, age, gender, nationality. They can be about education. They can be about seniority in the company. They can be about whatever. There are some natural occurring fault lines in any executive team. And these fault lines usually define that there's 2-3 smaller groups inside the team that have some special interests, some interests that are different from the other 1 or 2 groups that exist in the team. This is completely natural. I work with multinational companies around the world. I've worked in 20 countries in 126 business sectors, and I've seen it everywhere. There's people from different countries in any executive teams in a multinational these days, and that's just one of the main reasons for that to happen. But if you don't manage those fault lines, under pressure doesn't change behavior. It just makes explicit what was there already. So pressure brings out these fault lines, and I want to explain the mechanism. Pressure means that there's less time to make decisions. And when you have an executive team, the job of an executive team is to make decisions.
Right.
That's what these people are there for. And to make decisions, if you don't have the processes set, if you don't have the structure of the team set up, people need a lot of alignment meetings. They need a lot of iterations before reaching the decision because they don't take into consideration all groups, all interests, because there's not a common purpose, that they are not really aligned. And pressure reduces the time to have all those alignment iterations. And by doing that, you end up reducing the quantity and or quality of the decisions made. What happens with pressure is that by reducing that, you get the fault lines to appear because people get defensive. If I'm not sure that this is the best decision, I might get hurt or punished or terminated if I make a big mistake. So people rally around common interests to protect themselves. And when you have subgroups of the team, according to those initial fault lines, protecting themselves, you are putting the risk into the company. You are reducing the risk of the individual, and you put the risk, the burden of the risk for the company. Yeah. So one needs to generate trust and specific processes to glue the subgroups together in order to blur these fault lines.
So by now, Ricardo, I expected that you have mentioned somehow the term ego when talking about executives, but you went the opposite direction. You talked about shared accountability, but now you mentioned the fault lines and people get defensive. So I really wanted to ask you, how much do you think that ego or personal ego also affects the relationship between an executive team and could make it break or go?
If the CEO has a behavior mode, I don't see an ego, right? I don't see the ego of the CEO, for example. What I see is the behavior mode, and we assume that that's connected to ego. So what we see is the behavior mode, let's say, of command and control, because they have their power trip or whatever. If the person has this command and control mode, they will hurt trust. So that's going to be a direct impact of the individual behavior, according to ego, personality, however you want to call it, that we see on the team. But there's also the other example. I was actually trained as a family therapist, and I was a licensed family therapist, systemic family therapist. And I used to take couples as clients, and I would tell my clients, the couple would come in, and on the first session, I would just have a bit of education, right? And I would tell them, you guys are an example of the smallest team existing. It's a team of two, right? You are a couple, you are a team of two. Right. So we will have a discussion in our sessions about the goals that you have for this team, how you want to live your life, how many kids you want to have, what your sexuality will look like, all the dimensions of happiness in a couple. And only by having that conversation, often they would come back on the second session. Oh, you got me reflecting on this topic of us being a team, because I was thinking of my own goals. I was thinking of what I get and don't get in this team. And I understand now that if I don't give something, I get nothing. So I'm just using this as an example to say, in human systems, we have a different mathematics. Mathematics tells you 1 + 1 = 2. But in human systems, 1 + 1 = 3. Me, you, and the nature, the structure of the relationship that we establish. So if we are friends, that relationship has a specific structure. If we are a couple, it's another. If we are adversaries, it's another. If we are enemies, it's another. So the nature of the relationship does it exists per se, and it does over time change the nature of the individual. But initially you have, one ego, one identity, and they decide to establish a specific structure. And system thinkers and systemic therapists, as I was trained to be, we look at individuals as having many options of behavior. So even if you would prefer to do things your way and use the command and control mode to drive your executive team like a slave driver, and everybody just does whatever you want, if you understand that your goals, your career, the goals of the company, the vision of the company will get hurt by you having that behavior, you have other choices. And using those choices means that you have to give in some of your authority. You have to allow decision-making power. You have to allow freedom to your executive team so that they also shine, so that you can grow and they can grow. Your individual growth in an executive team or as a leader in general is connected to the growth of the people that you are leading or the people that are in your executive team. It's not a situation where you will win and everybody else in the team will lose. That's not going to happen. That's going to hurt you, and it's going to hurt the team.
If you are a CEO or a CHRO listening to this, how can these two roles build an effective executive team?
Usually those are the two roles that I mostly interact with. Right. And because of their roles, they have a unique viewpoint into the team, right? So the CEO is looking to the team a bit from the outside because they are leading the team. In the CHRO, by the nature of the function, they are usually trained to look at behavior and patterns and relationships. So the CEO must drive the transformation of the executive team. I'm not there to challenge any of that. I'm there to serve and to reinforce the leadership of the CEO whenever it's aligned with what I understand the interests of the company are. If I perceive that there's some ethical breaches or legal problems, then I will call that out and I will terminate my contract because that's on the contract. But I'm there to help this person to shine and to be the best leader and to have the best executive team because that's what serves the interests of the company. And I support them in driving it. So that's their role. They need to help the caterpillar to become a butterfly. And we will have many iterations before and after the workshops that I run with the team to for me to absorb what the vision of this person for the team is and what I can accomplish, of what parts of that vision I can help them to accomplish and what we can do together and what our two roles are. The CHRO is my go-to sparring partner because this person has the job to translate the strategy into HR systems. So whenever we change something in the dynamics of the executive team, I do that informed by whatever is happening in the rest of the company. And the CHRO is the person that feeds me into that. It's like I will go through any information that they give me to understand the impact of what we are doing at this level in the rest of the organization. And we can measure it through those systems as well. So they help me to, they feed by the process. They help me to be as accurate and as adapted to their own situation as possible. It's full customization depending also on their information, but also they translate what we are doing to ensure that the middle management then gets through the system, through the communication channels, get the benefit of what the executive team is doing as a transformational process.
We hear quite often that culture is cascades down from top to bottom. How much organizational culture is shaped indeed by the executive team?
The way we usually speak about culture is, we decide, we write up some values, some behavior descriptions, and we do some communication, we cascade it down, we get it through the organization. People, as soon as they understand, they will do it, and that's it. Done.
Yeah.
But culture, there's many definitions, and I got to this definition of culture that I put on that book, which is culture is a set of repeated patterns of behavior that come out of what leaders allow and do in the company. When there's any transformation, anything that needs to get done, a new culture, a merger and acquisition, you have different starting and ending points connected to culture, because culture are norms of behavior. There are patterns of behavior happening all over the company. You can decide whatever, but as complexity rises, people will look up to have the answer to the questions. They will look at the behavior of the executive team to decide if they are going to do the right thing according to the new culture or the wrong thing, which is whatever they were doing before. The company that was acquired had a culture, so they just continue identifying with that, right?
Right.
When it doesn't serve the new strategy anymore.
Right.
So this team sets the tone, sets the standard, sets the role model for the behavior in the company. And if they don't see that, then it's almost impossible to manage culture in a meaningful way.
Everyone that comes into the show, Ricardo, I like to ask for a recommendation, someone that I could also invite to be the next guest with an interesting project, an interesting story. Who would you like to recommend?
Actually, would like to recommend a client of mine that is working as the general manager of GB Foods Italy. His name is Antonio Mariani. Due to the vision that he has about what an executive team must be and the effort that he always puts in developing an executive team.
Challenge accepted. Thank you for the recommendation. And for everyone that is interested in connecting or following Ricardo, I've left in the video description the links for the books and the new YouTube channel. So feel free to connect and see where the conversation takes.
Thank you. Thank you, Jean-Ricardo. It was great.
Likewise. Have a nice day. Goodbye.
You too.